Hello there. First, I'm going to talk about what the application I made is and what is the game. It's a first-person shooter where the enemies chase you and you have to kill them and collect all the coins to win the game. You can also dodge the enemies and just focus on collecting the collectibles to win the game. You move in all four directions using the WASD keys and look around with your mouse and switch weapons by scrolling the mouse wheel. The player can take damage when he comes in contact with the enemy, and if he loses all the health, he's going to die. There is also an ammo system with auto reload, so when the ammo runs out, it reloads automatically and you cannot shoot while it is reloading. This way, it gives a good shooting experience. Now I am going to show you some gameplay. And that's the gameplay. Now for the programming I first created a player movement script. I'll just quickly open it up. So for the player movement, I first created a variable of type float to control the speed of the movement, and then I define an if statement where it checks whether the player presses the W key on the keyboard, and if he does, then he will move in the forward direction. Vector3.forward is just a short version of writing vector3 and defining the axis in the parentheses, and the same goes for all the four directions. The cursor.lock state locks the cursor in the center of the screen, and in this state the cursor is invisible regardless of the value of cursor.visible. Next, for the camera rotator script. In the camera rotate script, I created this script because I wanted the camera to rotate with the player so that the player can look around and shoot. I created two variables of type float that will be the value for the quaternion.euler so that it controls the rotation of the mouse correctly. Quaternion.euler is a method that returns a rotation that rotates z degrees around z axis, x degrees around x axis, and y degrees around y axis. So this line will rotate x degrees around x axis, and the next line finds the player game object and gets a transform component and stores it in the camera vector, and the same goes for the y axis. We can invert the controls just by changing the plus minus sign to plus. We can invert the controls so that the mouse, when you move the mouse up, it moves down like that. Next, for the shooting script. This script controls the shooting mechanic. I have a bunch of variables here for damage, range, camera, max ammo, current ammo, reload time, and is checks whether it is reloading or not, because I don't want it to shoot when it is reloading. So first I created an if statement where it checks whether the player is pressing the left mouse button. If the player is pressing the left mouse button, it calls a function fire. In the function fire, I set the current I want the current ammo to decrease. After that, I want a gun animation to play, and then I have written a code to play a gun audio. And then the main thing here is the raycast hit. I created a variable hit of type raycast hit. What raycast hit does is it shoots a ray, and when the ray hits an object, it gives us a feedback. The raycast hit is like a structure used to get information back from a raycast. So to shoot the raycast, I used physics.raycast, which needs starting position, the direction the ray has to be shoot, and the maximum distance the ray has to move. So I would the starting position of my ray is the camera starting position, and I want to shoot the ray where the in the direction the player is facing. So transform dot forward, and then I store this information in the hit variable, and then I define the range so that I cannot shoot for an infinite distance. The ray stops after this range, which is set to 100 in this case. Next, when the ray hits, I have to do damage. So for that I created the target script. I defined the enemy's health as 50, and then if the health is less than 0, then it destroys the enemy. Now I have to reference this target script to in the shooting script. So for that I made the function public, and then if this was private, I cannot access because of the protection level of the function. So since this is public, I could access it from the script just by calling the class target. Just by referencing the class target, I could call that function, and when the ray hits the enemy, it destroys the enemy. And I also added a UI code so that you can see how much ammo you have and whether it is reloading or not, and you can also see the player health and the enemy player health and collectibles. So for the collectibles I use the on trigger enter function. So when the player enters the trigger, it checks whether it is the collectible or not, and then it destroys the collectible and adds it to the score. The rotate script rotates the collectible in 90 degrees all the time. Next, for the weapon switching. For the weapon switching I used an index with 0. So 0 is pistol, 1 is rifle, 2 is sniper, like that. So if it checks whether the which index is active, so if I is, for this I used a for each loop. It checks whether if I is equal to 0, it will check if I is equal to say this selected weapon. If it is not, it will set the game object to false. If it is, it will set the game object to active. This way I can switch infinite number of weapons. All I have to do is just add the weapon to the game object, and I can switch it just by scrolling my mouse wheel. And after switching the weapon, I need it to fire. For this I used I enumerator, and also for reloading also I used the I enumerator and the coroutine function. I enumerator is an interface which when implemented allows you to iterate through a list of collections. So to implement I enumerator, we need to provide two methods. Here I have provided reload and start coroutine, and once we have implemented this, it can become a target for each loop. I also used a nested if statement to switch the weapons and make all this work, and I am also displaying the ammo through UI code, which basically gets the ammo variable and converts it to string and displays it as a text. So the problem I had with the script was with the raycast, I couldn't actually figure out, and I watched a YouTube tutorial and used that knowledge to make it work. And also for the weapon switching, I first used an array, and with the array I could switch the weapons, but every time I needed to add a weapon, I need to increase the size of the array. So I thought this was quite complicated, and then I switched it to nested if statements and just store the index in a separate variable and use that variable to switch the weapons. And to extend the game, I would add a chest box that needs a key to open it. I can add multiple weapons, I can add a grenade, I can add boss fights, and I can also make a level system. So every time a player completes a task, he would get rewards. That's my game. I hope you like it, and thank you for watching.